My name is Sarah, I'm 32 years old, and what I'm about to tell you is the kind of family drama you would never expect to happen at a dinner table. Picture this: the clinking of silverware, the soft chatter of relatives catching up, the smell of roasted chicken filling the air. Everyone looked relaxed, but my stomach was already tight with unease, because whenever my brother Mark was around, something unpleasant usually followed. Then, in the middle of dinner, he leaned back in his chair, wiped his mouth with a napkin, and said with the confidence of someone declaring a done deal, "By the way, I'll be moving into Grandma and Grandpa's house next month. It's only fair, it should be mine." The fork froze in my hand. My house? The one place that my grandparents had specifically left to me in their will, as a thank you for the years I had cared for them when no one else bothered? I glanced around the table, expecting someone to correct him, to remind him that this was settled long ago. But all I saw were lowered eyes and uncomfortable silence. My parents didn't say a word. No one defended me. My heart sank. Before I tell you the rest, let me ask, have you ever had someone in your family try to take something from you, as if your feelings didn't matter at all? If yes, drop a comment below because you'll understand exactly how I felt in that moment. I grew up as the quiet one in the family. Mark, my older brother, was always the favorite. He was praised for every small achievement, while my efforts were overlooked. When he failed classes, excuses were made. When he lost jobs, money was temporarily given to him, never repaid. And when I dared to complain, I was told, "He's just going through a tough time. You need to be patient." For years, I swallowed my frustration, believing that keeping peace was better than starting fights. But the house, my house, was different. It was more than bricks and walls. It was where I spent countless nights taking care of Grandma when her arthritis kept her awake. It was where I cooked soup for Grandpa when he was too weak to stand. It was where I heard their whispered gratitude, their gentle voices promising, "This home will be yours, Sarah. You've earned it." That house carried every ounce of love I had poured into them. So when Mark claimed it like a spoiled child grabbing someone else's toy, something inside me cracked. I wanted to shout right there at the table, to slam my hand down and scream, "No, it's mine." But I didn't. I stayed silent, letting the anger churn inside while he kept talking as if his plan was already reality. He bragged about how he would redecorate the living room, how he'd finally have space for his business ideas, how he deserved it because he was the eldest son. Each word was a slap in my face, but I bit my tongue. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't the time to explode. This wasn't just about emotion anymore, it was about strategy. That night, when I went home, I sat in the very living room he thought he could take from me. The familiar creak of the wooden floor, the photo frames of my grandparents smiling, it all wrapped around me like armor. For the first time, I realized I didn't have to play the role of the quiet, overlooked sister anymore. Mark had crossed a line, and if my family wouldn't stand up for me, I would have to stand up for myself. And believe me, I already had a plan. I barely slept that night. I tossed and turned in bed, staring at the ceiling as the words my brother had said replayed in my head on a loop. "I'll be moving into Grandma and Grandpa's house next month. It's only fair, it should be mine." That smug tone, that careless entitlement, it burned into my memory like a scar. What haunted me even more wasn't just Mark's arrogance, but the silence that followed. My parents sat there, sipping their wine, chewing their food, pretending as though nothing outrageous had been said. Not a single person reminded him that the will had been clear, that the house had been legally and rightfully mine. In that moment, I felt not just attacked but completely abandoned. You have to understand, this wasn't the first time something like this happened. My whole life had been a series of moments where my needs were brushed aside for Mark's comfort. When I was in high school and wanted to join the art program, my parents told me it was too expensive. Yet the very next week, they gave Mark money to buy a used car he didn't even take care of. When I landed my first job, I saved every penny to pay for college tuition on my own. Mark, meanwhile, dropped out of his courses, lived at home rent-free, and still had his bills covered without question. If I ever dared to bring up the unfairness, The same response always came. He's your brother. We have to help him. But what about helping me? Did anyone ever think about that? So yes, I had learned to expect this pattern. But knowing it doesn't make it hurt less. That night, lying awake, I realized how deeply this cycle had seeped into me. I had grown used to shrinking myself, to keeping quiet, to swallowing the bitterness just to keep peace at the dinner table. Yet now Mark wasn't just borrowing money or hogging attention. He was trying to take away the one thing that represented years of my love, labor, and sacrifice. It was as if all the nights I stayed awake helping Grandma with her pain, all the afternoons I spent cooking for Grandpa, all the love they poured back into me, none of it mattered. My family was willing to erase it all in one casual declaration. I remember sitting up in bed, my chest tight with the mix of anger and despair. For a moment I thought, maybe I should just let it go. Maybe fighting will only make things worse. That's what I had always done, choose silence over conflict. But the thought of Mark waltzing through the doorway of that house, redecorating rooms he had never cleaned, claiming a legacy he had never earned, it made me sick. If I let this happen, I wouldn't just lose the house. I would lose myself. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen where the sunlight spilled through the curtains, landing on the framed photo of my grandparents that I kept on the counter. They were smiling in that picture, holding hands as if nothing in the world could shake them. My throat tightened. "What would you want me to do?" I whispered. I could almost hear my grandmother's voice, gentle but firm. "You stood by us when we needed you most. Don't let anyone take away what we gave you." It wasn't just about property. It was about respect, about acknowledgement, about drawing a line that had been blurred for far too long. Later that day, I confided in my friend Emily. She had been by my side through years of Mark's antics and my family's blind favoritism. As soon as I told her what happened, she shook her head in disbelief. "Sarah," she said, "you've got to stop letting them walk all over you. You think keeping quiet keeps the peace, but really it just lets them keep doing it. If you don't stand up now, you'll never get that house back, and more than that, you'll never get your dignity back." Her words cut straight to the truth I had been avoiding. Still, the fear lingered. The idea of confronting my brother, my parents, the entire family, it felt overwhelming. What if they turned on me? What if they cut me off entirely? But then another thought slipped in. What if that's not the worst thing? Maybe losing their approval was better than losing myself. Maybe setting boundaries would finally give me the life I deserved, instead of the one they dictated. That evening, I sat in the living room again, the walls of the house glowing in the soft light of sunset. I traced my fingers along the old oak table my grandfather had built by hand, the table where I had done my homework as a kid. Every corner of this house carried a piece of me, a memory carved into its foundation. And the more I looked around, the more I felt a quiet strength rising in me. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about how to avoid conflict. I was thinking about how to protect what was mine. By the time night fell, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to let this story play out the same way all the others had. I wasn't going to let Mark steamroll me just because he was used to it. But here's the thing. I also knew that anger alone wouldn't be enough. If I wanted to win, I needed more than just words. I needed a plan, something airtight, something that would not only protect me but leave no room for arguments, no chance for them to twist the story. And as the idea began forming in my mind, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: control. Because this time, when my brother thought he had me cornered, I would be the one holding the cards. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but it was no longer wild or chaotic. It was focused, controlled. I knew I couldn't just storm into my parents' house, slam my fist on the table, and shout at Mark to back off. That's what he would expect. Me losing my temper, giving them a reason to call me emotional or irrational. No, this time I would be smarter. I would play the long game. The first step was information. I dug out the box of legal papers I had kept carefully stored since my grandparents' passing. The will was right there in black and white. The house was mine outright with no conditions. My grandparents had been deliberate in their choice. They knew Mark's reckless history, his endless demands, his inability to value anything. As I read those lines again, I felt their presence beside me like a silent reinforcement whispering, "We chose you, Sarah. Don't let him rewrite the story." But having the will wasn't enough. Mark was bold and shameless. He would try to twist the narrative, to say it was family property, or that I was selfish for keeping it. I knew how he operated. Manipulation, guilt-tripping, dragging others to his side. If I wanted to outsmart him, I needed more than documents. I needed a shield. That's when the idea struck me. If the house was my greatest asset, why not secure it in a way that made it untouchable? That afternoon, I made an appointment with a real estate attorney. Sitting in his polished office, I laid out the situation, every detail of my brother's threats and my family's silence. He listened carefully, nodding with a mixture of sympathy and professionalism. "Sarah," he said, adjusting his glasses, "legally you're already protected. But if you want to remove any possible leverage, you have options. You can place the property in a trust. You can sell it. You can even transfer it into a business entity under your control. That way, no matter what your family says, the house won't be dangling in front of them anymore. It'll be yours beyond argument." The thought of selling it had crossed my mind before, but hearing it from him made it real. For years, I had clung to the house as a symbol of love, of legacy, of my grandparents' faith in me. But maybe, just maybe, the true way to honor them was not by clinging to the past, but by securing my future. Did I really want to live forever in a place that would constantly remind me of family battles, where every corner carried the weight of resentment? Or did I want freedom, the chance to start fresh without looking over my shoulder? That night, I walked through the house slowly, touching the walls, letting the memories flood back. Grandma humming in the kitchen. Grandpa fixing the old clock in the hallway. Their laughter, their stories, their warmth. Tears pricked at my eyes, but instead of despair, I felt peace. Selling the house wouldn't erase them. They lived in me, in the lessons they taught, in the strength they passed down. Letting go of the physical walls didn't mean letting go of them. It meant letting go of the chains my family had wrapped around me. So I made the decision. Quietly, without telling anyone, I put the house on the market. My realtor assured me that given the location and the upkeep, it would sell quickly. And she was right. Within weeks I had offers, one of them so generous it almost felt unreal. $850,000 in cash. When I signed the papers, my hands trembled. Not from fear but from exhilaration. For the first time in my life, I was in control of the narrative. The house was no longer a pawn in my brother's power games. It was my victory, my leverage, my future. But here's the part that made it even sweeter. I didn't say a word. When Mark texted me asking when he could swing by and measure the living room for his furniture, I simply replied, "Not a good time." When my mother hinted, "Maybe you should think about sharing, it would be good for the family," I smiled politely and said, "We'll see." Meanwhile, the deal was already finalized, the money already secured in my account. During those weeks, I also started planning the next chapter of my life. I invested a portion into a safe savings account, another portion into a small business idea I had been nurturing for years. For once, I wasn't waiting for approval or permission. I wasn't asking anyone what they thought I should do. I was making choices for myself. Every decision felt like reclaiming a piece of my independence that I had lost in years of being overshadowed by my brother. Still, I knew the storm was coming. Mark wasn't the type to back down. He truly believed he could walk into my life and take what wasn't his, and he had no idea that the ground beneath his feet had already shifted. I could almost picture his face the moment he would find out, the arrogance draining away, replaced by shock, disbelief, maybe even fear. And I won't lie, that image kept me going. It was the justice I had longed for. The justice no one else had ever given me. As I folded the last of the sale documents and tucked them safely away, I whispered to myself, "It's done. He has no power here anymore. And with that, I felt lighter than I had in years. But this was only the beginning. Because when the confrontation finally came, and it did, it would be far more explosive than even I imagined. The calm before the storm didn't last long. About 2 weeks after that dinner, Mark started blowing up my phone. At first, it was casual short texts like, "When are you giving me the keys?" Or, "Need to check out the basement soon, gotta see if it'll fit my stuff." I ignored most of them, answering only with vague replies like, "Not a good time," or, "I'll let you know." But the longer I stalled, the more impatient he became. Soon, his tone shifted from casual to demanding. "Stop playing games, Sarah. You know the house belongs to me too." That one made me laugh out loud. Belongs to him? He hadn't spent a single night caring for Grandma when her hands hurt too much to grip a spoon. He hadn't driven Grandpa to doctor's appointments or cooked meals after long days at work. He hadn't lifted a finger. But in his twisted sense of entitlement, simply being the older son made him believe he had a claim. By the 3rd week, his texts turned into late-night calls. Sometimes I would wake up at midnight to see his name flashing on my phone, over and over again. When I didn't answer, he left voicemails, his voice dripping with arrogance. "You better not think you can cut me out, Sarah. I've already told my friends I'll be moving in soon. Don't embarrass yourself by trying to fight me." But I wasn't fighting him, not in the way he thought. I wasn't raising my voice or begging for fairness. Instead, I was letting him dig his own grave, one arrogant word at a time. Because while he was bragging about his new house, I was quietly finalizing paperwork, securing funds, and putting plans into motion that he couldn't even imagine. The real pressure, though, didn't come from him alone. My parents started calling more often, too. Their tone syrupy sweet but sharp underneath. "Sarah, maybe you should be more generous with your brother," my mother would say. "He's been through so much. Sharing the house could bring the family together." My father added his own twist. "Think of it as an investment. Mark needs stability, and you can always buy another place later." Every word felt like a betrayal. They weren't asking about me, about my needs, or even acknowledging the truth. The house was mine. All they cared about was keeping Mark comfortable, as always. The same script I had heard my entire life was playing again. But this time I wasn't the same Sarah. I listened calmly, nodding into the phone, replying with vague, non-committal phrases like, "I'll think about it," while my heart hammered in quiet triumph. Because what they didn't know was that it was already too late. The house wasn't mine to share anymore. It had new owners, and the money was already sitting in my account. One Saturday, things escalated further. Mark showed up at the house unannounced. I was sitting in the living room reading when I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. I peeked through the curtain and there he was, stepping out of his car with a cocky grin, carrying a tape measure and a notepad like he was some kind of architect. I opened the door before he could knock. "What are you doing here, Mark?" I asked, my voice even. "Relax," he said, brushing past me as if he owned the place. "Just taking some measurements. Gotta figure out where I'm putting my entertainment center. The master bedroom is mine, by the way. Don't worry. I'll let you stay in one of the smaller rooms until you move out." The audacity nearly knocked the breath out of me. He strutted through the house, measuring walls, making notes, already talking about paint colors. I followed him silently, biting back every urge to scream. Because while he dreamed about his future here, I knew the truth. In less than a month, this wouldn't even be my house to walk through. "Mark," I finally said, leaning against the doorway, "don't you think you're getting ahead of yourself?" He smirked. "Don't play dumb. Everyone knows Mom and Dad want me here. You'll see, Sarah. It's better for everyone this way. Better for everyone except me." But instead of arguing, I let him leave, whistling as if he had already won. The moment his car disappeared down the road, I exhaled a shaky laugh. Let him plan his fantasy. The higher he climbed in his imagination, the harder the fall would be. That night, Emily came over. I told her about Mark's little tour of the house, And she burst out laughing. He really thinks it's his, doesn't he? Sarah, when you finally tell him, his jaw is going to hit the floor. I know, I said, smiling for the first time in days. That's what keeps me going. Still, I couldn't deny the nerves building in me. The confrontation was inevitable. Mark wouldn't stop until he got a dramatic answer, and my parents were too spineless to intervene. That meant the showdown would have to happen with all of us in the same room once and for all. And secretly, I wanted it that way. I wanted every single one of them to hear the truth at the same time. I wanted the silence at that dinner table to be broken, not by their excuses or manipulations, but by my voice, strong and unshakable. So I waited. I played the part they expected, the quiet sister, the one who would think about it. Meanwhile, I rehearsed the words in my head, imagined the looks on their faces, and prepared myself for the moment the game would end. Because soon the next family dinner would come. And when it did, I wouldn't just be defending my house. I'd be reclaiming my power. The night of the next family dinner, I walked into my parents' house with a calmness that almost felt surreal. I wasn't trembling. I wasn't afraid. I knew exactly what was about to happen, and for the first time I felt ready. The table was set with roast beef, mashed potatoes, and glasses of wine. Everyone was already seated. My parents at either end, Mark lounging like a king in his chair, smirking when he saw me. Well, he said loudly, as if picking up right where he'd left off, I hope everyone's ready for the big change. By next month, I'll be living in Grandma and Grandpa's house. Finally, some space of my own. His words cut through the chatter, and once again the room fell silent. I looked around. My mother fiddled with her fork, my father cleared his throat, my cousins avoided eye contact. No one dared to challenge him, just like last time. But this time I didn't stay quiet. I placed my napkin neatly on the table, straightened my back, and said, Actually, Mark, you won't be living there. The smirk faltered for a split second before returning. Don't be dramatic, Sarah. Mom and Dad already know it makes sense. You don't need such a big house. I'll take good care of it. I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. You can't take care of what doesn't belong to you. My father frowned. Sarah, let's not fight tonight. No, Dad. I interrupted, my voice steady. We need to stop pretending. This house has been mine since the day Grandma and Grandpa's will was read. That's the truth. But since Mark can't seem to accept it, I made sure he never could. The house has already been sold. It isn't mine anymore. And it sure as hell isn't his. For a moment, silence hung heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. Then it happened. Mark's jaw dropped. His face went pale, then flushed red as if the blood was boiling under his skin. What? He choked out. You heard me, I said firmly. I sold it 3 weeks ago. It's gone, Mark. You can't move into it. You can't redecorate it. You can't claim it. The new owners will be moving in next month. So whatever fantasy you had in your head, it's over. He slammed his fist on the table, rattling the silverware. You can't do that. That was supposed to be mine. I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. It was never yours. Not for a single second. My mother gasped, clutching her chest. Sarah, how could you sell the family home without telling us? I turned to her, my voice still calm. Because it stopped being a family home the moment no one defended me. The moment you all sat in silence and let him try to take it from me. That house was entrusted to me, and I chose what to do with it. You don't get to erase years of my sacrifice just because Mark feels entitled. The room buzzed with whispers, shock spreading like wildfire. My cousins exchanged wide-eyed glances. My father looked stunned, caught between his son's rage and my unshakable resolve. Mark, on the other hand, was unraveling. He stood up, pacing around the table like a caged animal. You betrayed me. You betrayed this family, he shouted. I shook my head slowly. No, Mark. I finally stopped betraying myself. The words landed like a hammer. He froze, his mouth opening and closing but no sound coming out. For the first time in my life, I saw him speechless. Then came the twist of the knife. I pulled a slim folder from my bag and laid it on the table. These are the documents. Sale finalized. Funds secured. And just so we're clear, I didn't waste the money. I invested it. Part went into a new apartment for me. Part went into savings. And part went into starting the business I've dreamed of for years. While you were busy making plans to freeload, I was making plans for my future. The color drained completely from his face. He sank back into his chair, staring at the folder as if it were poison. My parents sat in stunned silence, their mouths half open but no words coming out. And in that silence I felt something I had never felt before in my family. Power. Not power from dominance or cruelty, but power from finally choosing myself. I picked up my fork, cut into the roast beef and said casually, "Now shall we eat? I'd hate for dinner to get cold." The room stayed silent, the only sound the scrape of my knife against the plate. For once no one dared to interrupt me. The silence after my words stretched on like a heavy curtain no one dared to lift, and in that moment I realized I had shifted the balance of our entire family dynamic, because for the first time, I wasn't the one shrinking back or apologizing, I was the one who had taken action, and it terrified them, especially Mark, who sat staring at the folder of sale documents as if it were proof that the universe had turned against him. He kept shaking his head, muttering, "No, you can't do this," as if repeating the words would undo the reality staring him in the face. My mother was the first to break the silence, her voice trembling between shock and anger. "Sarah, how could you? That house was supposed to stay in the family." I turned to her calmly and said, "It stayed in the family for as long as the family respected it. The moment everyone let Mark claim it as his, without a shred of acknowledgement for what I gave, it stopped being a family home. It became a battleground. I wasn't willing to let the love Grandma and Grandpa gave me be twisted into another power play." My father rubbed his temples, clearly trying to hold back frustration, but his silence spoke volumes. He wasn't defending me, but he wasn't defending Mark either, because deep down he knew the will had been clear all along. And then Mark exploded, slamming his fist again and shouting, "You're selfish. You've always been jealous because I'm the oldest, and now you've ruined everything." I didn't flinch, not this time. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "No, Mark. I was quiet, I was patient, I was generous for years, but you mistook my silence for weakness. This isn't jealousy, this is justice. You thought you could take without giving. You thought being loud and entitled would make you the winner. But I learned something you never did. Strength isn't about shouting, it's about acting." His face twisted with rage, but behind it I could see something else creeping in, fear. Because he finally understood that the safety net he had always relied on, the indulgence of our parents, the silence of his sister, was gone. My decision was final, irreversible, and he had no way to claw it back. Dinner that night ended awkwardly, with plates barely touched and everyone avoiding my eyes, but I didn't care, because I walked out of that house with my head held high, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying the weight of their expectations on my shoulders. Over the next few weeks, the fallout became clear. Mark tried to rally sympathy from relatives, spinning wild stories about how I had betrayed him, but the more he spoke, the more ridiculous he sounded, because everyone knew the truth. He had never earned a single thing, and I had every right to do what I did. My parents called me a few times, sometimes to scold me, sometimes to plead with me to fix the family, but I no longer bent under their words. I told them gently but firmly, "I love you, but I won't sacrifice my peace anymore. If you want me in your life, you will have to respect my choices." That was the new boundary, and for once I wasn't afraid to enforce it. The money from the sale gave me the freedom I had always dreamed of. I bought a beautiful apartment downtown, bright and airy, filled with light instead of shadows, a place that was truly mine without ghosts of old arguments lingering in the corners. I invested in myself, in my business idea, in my future, and every step I took felt like reclaiming the pieces of myself I had lost to years of being overlooked. Was it painful to distance myself from my family? Yes, but it was a clean kind of pain, the kind that heals instead of festers, and with every passing day I grew stronger. Sometimes I thought back to that dinner, to the look on Mark's face when he realized the truth, and it still made me smile, not out of cruelty, but because it was the moment I finally broke free. Revenge, I realized, isn't always about hurting the other person. Sometimes it's about protecting yourself so fiercely that their power over you evaporates. My brother didn't lose a house that night. He lost control over me, and that was the real shock. From then on, whenever someone asked me about family, I didn't sigh or shrink anymore. I simply said, I've learned that family should be built on respect, not entitlement. And I finally know the difference. In the weeks that followed, life began to feel different in ways I hadn't expected, because it wasn't just about the money or the new apartment or the business plan slowly coming to life. It was about breathing without fear, walking without the heavy weight of resentment pressing on my chest, and realizing that for the first time, I had chosen myself without apology, and that choice changed everything. My brother tried for a while to claw back control, sending angry texts, calling relatives, painting me as the villain who stole his future. But the more he raged, the clearer it became to everyone that his anger wasn't about losing a house, it was about losing the ability to control me. And once I saw that, I no longer felt even a flicker of guilt. My parents were slower to adjust, sometimes calling to ask if I regretted it, sometimes sighing into the phone with disappointment, but I stayed firm, repeating the same quiet boundary. I will not sacrifice my peace anymore. And eventually, they stopped pressing because they realized their words had no power over me unless I gave it to them. That was the true revenge. Not the sale of the house, not the shock on Mark's face, but the freedom that came when I stopped living as the family's doormat and started living as myself. People often think revenge means destruction, but I learned that the sweetest kind of revenge is transformation. When you take the pain someone gave you and turn it into power. When you let their attempts to hurt you become the fire that fuels your growth. Every time I unlock the door to my new apartment, filled with light and silence that belongs only to me, I feel that victory all over again. Every time I sketch out plans for my business, every time I look at my savings account and know I built this life with my own decisions, I feel stronger, and the memory of my brother's entitled voice no longer stings. It only reminds me why I will never let anyone take advantage of me again. Looking back, I realized that house was never the true inheritance. The real gift my grandparents left me wasn't walls or a roof. It was the trust they placed in me, the acknowledgement of my devotion, the proof that they saw my worth even when the rest of the family pretended not to. By choosing to honor that trust in my own way, I didn't lose them. I carried them with me into the life they would have wanted for me, one of dignity, independence, and peace. And that is something no one, not even my brother, can ever take away. So if you're listening to my story right now, I want to ask you, have you ever had a moment where you finally said enough to family? Where you drew a line that could never be crossed again? If you have, share it in the comments, because your story might give someone else the courage they need to find their voice. And if you're still waiting for that moment, let mine be the reminder that you are stronger than you think, that you don't have to keep carrying pain just because it comes from family, and that sometimes the greatest revenge is simply choosing yourself and refusing to look back.